Hello everyone, welcome to Real PR with me, Fiona Scott. I hope you're having a good day, week, month. Here we are again, discussing stories, people, and also PR, which is the same thing if we're doing it properly anyway. I really hope you enjoy today's show. I'm joined by a fellow journalist, someone we've not met in person, but we've dealt with each other online before and via email, Georgina Fuller. But I'm going to let her tell you all about herself.
Thank you, Fiona. Hello, everybody. I'm rubbish at this elevator pitch, but I have been a journalist for over 20 years. I write mostly for national newspapers, The Times, The Telegraph, The Eye, but I have written for everybody from, say, Tatler to Take a Break, from the magazines, and I write about the very broad lifestyle topic, including parenting, including travel, including neurodiversity. And I kind of pivoted over from B2B over 10 years ago. So I do more lifestyle now, but my background is in B2B.
And tell me, Georgina, how did you get started as a journalist over 20 years ago?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I started out, I did a postgrad in journalism, and then I did lots of unpaid work experience, or I think I was paid about 50 quid a week. And I worked at the Mail on Sunday and More magazine. Older listeners will remember More back in the day. And then I finally got offered a job as an editorial assistant on a business magazine, and that's how I started out. And then I went on to be a reporter and a features editor and a deputy editor. So I spent probably about 6 years, I think, before I went freelance as staff, working for various different titles.
What's the difference for you then between the B2B stuff that you did and the kind of thing that you do now?
I mean, it's obviously more fun what I do now, and I can write about all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And I do a lot of first person stuff, which is quite straightforward and quite uncomplicated. Whereas when I was doing B2B, I did a lot on HR and the world of work. So I was doing a lot of interviews and I had to keep very much sort of up to date with trends and workplace and what was happening within the changing world of work. So it was still interesting. And I was always thought I was very fortunate to be able to do that as well. But now it's much more broad, I suppose. And the travel is obviously a major perk as well. So writing about going to different places and meeting different people, it's still a real privilege. And the novelty of that hasn't worn off. So yeah, it's more varied, I suppose, which keeps me interested and on my toes.
Let's talk about first person pieces. Let's not assume that people know what that actually means, Georgina. And I noticed you've done one recently at time of recording about quite a deeply personal one, which
Mm.
I'll let you tell people about. So why do you do that? Because when I started almost 40 years ago, journalists didn't do that stuff.
Mm. I think for me, it kind of the first time it was a bit by accident. So it was over 10 years ago, because I know actually it was probably 11 years ago, because my daughter's just turned 11 and I was on maternity leave. And I wrote a blog about being a mum without a mum. And I was just bored. Well, not bored, but I mean, I wasn't actively working. And I was just really missing my mum. And I wrote about it. And then that went viral, as they say. And then the Daily Mail asked me to write about it, and I spent a couple of days kind of umming and ahhing and the whole sort of moral aspect of writing for them, and I did do it in the end, and that was my first person piece. So it was just about an experience which I think lots of other people who had lost their mums related to, and it's really just, I think, connecting with people, and I'm still in touch with, and online friends, some friends in real life now, with people from that story. So that was my first big sort of emotional piece that I'd written, and it was really cathartic. And I think anyone that's lost someone, I really like talking about my mum, and writing about her, because it's something that the children will hopefully be able to read and remember her by, because they never got to meet her. So yeah, first person is generally something which, it can be an emotional issue, or it can be a really light-hearted, silly piece about, I don't know, a recent holiday that you didn't like, or a friendship breakup, and it's just really generic, and broad.
So tell us about the most recent one that I've seen that you took, where you talk about your brother. Just share some of that with us.
Yeah, I mean, that was a hard one to write, because yeah, I lost my brother 21 years ago. It still makes me emotional talking about it. But I've always been interested in, so he had schizophrenia, which when we lost him, we didn't talk about mental illness. We did not discuss those kinds of things. We talked about it as a family, but I wouldn't talk about it to friends. I certainly wouldn't have taken it into the workplace with me. And I've been really interested seeing how the conversations around mental health have evolved over the years. And I remember going to a work do when I was still doing B2B, actually. I think it was a Future of Work conference, and Alistair Campbell was there talking about having a sibling with schizophrenia. And I thought, wow, gosh, someone's actually up on a stage talking about it. And then I read a book by a Times writer, Satnam, I think that's how I pronounce it, Sangera, who The Boy with the Top Knot, which was about having a parent and a sibling with schizophrenia. And, um, relating to people like that and knowing that you're not alone is such a powerful thing, I think, as a writer. So, yeah, I did an article at the weekend, which, I had to obviously sort of run it by my dad and my sister, because he's he belongs to them as well, my brother. But yeah, so he died in 2004. But it was also about the link between now having a child who is on the autism spectrum, but who is very similar to my brother in lots of behaviour ways, and how he communicates, and having delays. And I obviously kind of went into a real worry about, is it going to be the same scenario? Is he going to have a really unhappy life? And is he going to go into psychosis? Really dark stuff. But I think writing about the dark things and writing about the shame is a really, for me, it's a really helpful process. And because of my job, I get to interview and speak to experts. So I spoke to somebody from KCL, from King's College London, who Sir Professor Robin Murray, who has literally sort of dedicated his life to schizophrenia research. He's been doing it since the 80s, and he was one of the first psychiatrists who drew a link between a neurodevelopmental aspect. So he gets to try and explain to me in very simple layman's terms about the genetic link between it. And then I spoke to somebody from the Autism Research Unit at the University of Bath, who's an expert on autism. So, yeah, one of the again, privileges, I suppose, of what I do is getting access to people who are, very skilled and very experienced, and asking them, this is, what happened to me? What's your take on it? So hopefully, so already over the weekend, I've had lots of messages from people who have either a schizophrenic parent or a sibling, and you think that you're alone. I think, and I think it's easier to write about things for me, to articulate them like that, than it is to talk about it, because people get embarrassed, people get awkward. So I've started talking and writing about my brother more in the last couple of years. I think the first piece I've only written maybe two. I think, was that my second or my third? I think the first piece was related to Will Young, the singer, who was at the same university at the same time as me, actually, writing about his brother. And I watched. Did you watch the Heston Blumenthal documentary on being
I,
bipolar?
I didn't watch it, but I was aware of it.
It was. I really recommend it on iPlayer, and I, really like the fact that we are opening up, and I really want to be a part of that, changing the stigma, challenging the stigmas. It sounds like such a cliche, but I think when you've got personal experience of it, and you've got the background of, in the 90s when I was at school, I never talked about my brother. I was so embarrassed. And he was sectioned, and it was really difficult, and it was really traumatic. And now we are hopefully in a more compassionate, more curious um, place with all of that. So yeah, and I write about my autistic son a lot, which I used to do under a pseudonym and anonymously because I thought about the privacy issue. But again, he's 13 now, and we've talked a lot about, are you happy for me to talk about this? And we talk a lot about how autism affects him. And at school, he's been at a specialist school for about 2 years. They have lots of conversations about life skills and things that he might find harder than a neurotypical. And it's also, yeah, I've been on my own, again, such a cliche to say journey, but, I've been diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia. My eldest has ADHD. So all of these things, it's so kind of, well, it's really simple. I'm just sharing my experience. That's it. That's the first person piece. But hopefully within that, it enables other people to share their experiences, like the kind of domino effect. And I think we talk a lot about grief. We talk much more about neurodiversity, and we talk much more about mental health. So those are things that I kind of am happy to put myself forward for, um, and break down, yeah, the stigmas that still exist.
I've shared some things about my own life, but I just think that historically, because I grew up in a era of journalism where journalists were rather seen and not heard, I still find it difficult. But I've done a few things, and I always admire journalists that do that. And I hope to do it more in the future. But
Thank you. Yeah,
let's
I
move
think.
on. Oh, so sorry to interrupt you, Georgina. What did you want
Well,
to say?
no, I was just going to say. I mean, it's definitely more of a female thing, isn't it? Like you don't get a lot of men or male writers having to pour their heart out. So, I am really conscious of that. I don't know if it is an equal playing field, but yeah, as you say, I probably didn't grow up with it either. So yeah, it's a new
I
thing.
think I think it's courageous, but I totally agree with you that doing things like that can be cathartic, because even on a very small scale, if something really riles me and I will write about it, even if it's just on a Word document on my laptop and nobody ever sees the light of day, the act of getting it out of my system doesn't lessen the impact of something, it just makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So yours is like a higher level of that in some ways, but also you've taken that other step of wanting to serve people and helping them deal with whatever they're facing.
Well, I know that I find it helpful when I read about it. So I think, well, if I can enable someone else to feel, I don't know, less alone. And I remember going to an event about diversity when it was pre-lockdown. I think we probably just got my son diagnosed, and there was another journalist doing a talk about her son, and she'd written a book called, well, I can say Jessie Hewitts, and she used to write for the Times. She's at the Eye now. How to raise a happy autistic child, and I was in a room full of parents who'd had to give up work or go self-employed, or had been suffering with depression, and it was just such a it's just a really life changing experience because I genuinely thought that like I was one of the only people that was going through this, and it was because I was a terrible mum, that I had this child that I didn't know how to manage and I didn't know how to navigate it. So it was a real like epiphany, and that's when I switched. I think writing about it under my name, because I thought, well, if they can do it, if she can do it, I can do it. Mm.
I'm sure we'll get comments on that. And I think that the whole question of neurodiversity will continue and become a much bigger issue. I think it's far more common than people realise. It's far
Yeah.
more nuanced than people realise. And we probably all carry some traits, particularly with ADHD. It's just what tips the balance between um, being diagnosed in that way and just having some of the traits. I think it's a very interesting area.
Mm.
I would predict it's definitely going to continue to be a trend into 2026 for us, people like us. But Georgina, I want to ask you something about, your working day. What does your working day look like so that listeners can understand what a journalist like to you? How do you find your stories? What's the first thing you do in the morning? So talk us through a working day.
Yeah, so the first thing I do straight away when I get up, they say you shouldn't check your phone, but I have a look at all the different websites and I look at what the big stories are of the day, what people are writing about, what people are talking about, and I will generally try and pitch off the back of that. So anything, obviously the SEN debate, as you say, is very, very topical at the moment. So I think there was something in the eye last week about specialists about mainstream schools becoming more inclusive, but actually, in my experience, they're not. So I quite often, yeah, will pitch something personal or recent pieces. What are my recent pieces? So there was one about the baby food pouches. So I wrote a piece on that because they were saying that Ella's Kitchen and all the others are actually like ultra processed food and loaded with sugar. So I used to give my kids those all the time. There was something about Ollie Murs getting in training and having a six pack, and I was like, well, can you imagine if that was a mother? Like his wife's about to have a second child, and spending hours and hours in the gym. I got loads of hate on LinkedIn from that. So it's yeah. The first thing that I do is have a look at the news, listen to the Today program, um, little plug from them, and then I obviously look at my emails and I look at my press releases. But I don't look at press releases so much anymore because I get loads. But if there's any surveys or studies, and I mean I don't do any celebrity stuff really, but I need to probably be more up to date with what's happening in the celebrity world because I think that's again quite often a good way to sort of pivot articles. So yeah, so I do that. I try and send maybe 5 pictures a day, and I always like to try and have something lined up for that week in terms of doing an interview or doing something like this. I try and get out like once a week to either an event or meeting somebody in person. Um, I probably devote half of my day to pitching and then half to writing. So I've had 2 pitches in this morning. One was in like a journalist group, and they were looking for someone, and I was able to offer my experience. And I know, as you know, Fiona, like time, it's always being really quick. So I skim read on like Facebook on the different groups to see if people are doing call outs. I might have a look for journal requests as well. But hopefully, like most weeks, I've got 1 or 2 things that I've got to do already, so that I know I've got work, basically. So yeah, I don't know
And
whether that's
no, that's really helpful because actually that's not much different to me. The only difference between you and me is generally who pays my bills.
yeah.
Is
And
it?
you probably have a more regular income than mine. Mine's like
Yes.
this.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons I do what I do because you probably don't know, but when I started, um, I was became a freelance. I was in TV, so I became freelance in 2008. Um, I I had 4 children that I was responsible for, so I had to earn straight away. So I thought, I can be a journalist for businesses. And that's how I thought of it. I didn't think I wanted to do PR. I thought I'll be a journalist for businesses and treat their stories as any other journalist would. And I've managed to make a living doing that, and I'm very proud of it. Um, every now and then, I'm asked by national press to do a story on something they've seen me write about. But the world is a big place, Georgina. There are a ton of Facebook groups, millions you could look through. How do you prioritize the best places to go and to pitch to hit that speed and to give you enough, I don't know, enough irons in the fire, which might actually pay your bills?
Yeah. I mean, my kind of rule of thumb is that I have to be able to sum it up and write about it very quickly. So I should be able to very quickly see 3 paragraphs that I go, yes, 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 I can cover that. And if I've got an interview or there's people that, I'll have spoken to before and I'll think, oh, yes, I can go back to them. So I can very quickly send them something and say, can you just give me your thoughts on X, Y, Z? And if they're able to come back and it's able to, I always think of the headline, I always think what's going to be the kind of USP of this. So it's got to be really easy and relatable. And if it's too complicated, if I've really got to like unpick that or think, okay, then that's probably not gonna. I'm not going to be able to pitch it to an editor. I'm not going to be able to get their interest because I don't get it straight away. So I've got to be able to sum it up very quickly. And I quite often I'll do like an hour of going through and doing very quick skim reading, and then I'll like get the kids off to school, and then walk the dogs for half an hour and think about it, and then by the time I come back, if I haven't, hopefully I'll have sent some emails off, but if I haven't, then I'll be able to do that quite quickly. Um,
So, what kind of role in your daily life or weekly life do case studies or experts play? And how do you build a relationship with them?
I mean, experts, there's like a psychologist, or I think she's a psychotherapist, she's a doctor. There's a couple of them that I always go to, first of all, to get their take on something. So I wasn't able to use her for that Times piece about schizophrenia in the end, unfortunately, because it was cut down to fit a page. But I will always ask her about stuff. I will always ask her about trauma or an impact of a bigger issue. Um, so I go to her, and then there's a couple of people. I write a lot about perimenopause. I do a lot about my voice is going. Hang on, just have some water. I do a lot about women's health and HRT. So Louise Newson, who's like one of the vocal campaigners for HRT, I've got her number and her PR's number. So over time, and I think with case studies at the moment, I've got one that I'm trying to. I've got an editor that's interested in doing a piece with her, but it's always I don't want to push people about anything that they're uncomfortable with. So this lady has had two stillborn babies, which is obviously absolutely tragic. And she said that that has been the pivot for a career change for her. So there's kind of two sides of it. Obviously there's the career change, and there's the tragedy and the triumph over tragedy. So it's kind of trying to gauge how comfortable she is really in discussing that. And some of my kind of best interviews with people are ghosted pieces. They're as told to. They're the anonymous pieces. And I've interviewed, well, gosh, everybody from like swingers of the Telegraph to one of the best ones that I did actually. And he's amazing. He's now absolutely everywhere. He does loads on socials, and he's a guy called Marvin Harrison, and he emailed me. It's a couple of years ago now, saying that he'd set up a podcast called Dope Black Dads. And it was all about how underrepresented black fathers are in the media. You just don't see them very often in adverts, you don't hear them very often on the radio. And he was trying to change that. And he sort of set up a WhatsApp group, and then he'd done a podcast. And I did an interview with him for The Guardian. And then they did a shoot with his family, and his wife was fine about the children being pictured. And he does so much stuff now. He's become basically a spokesperson for fathers that are underrepresented in the media. So I feel I've had some small part in giving him a bigger platform or helping him get on that platform. Those kinds of pieces are really meaningful because they make a real difference. And it could have been anybody, any journalist could have done the interview, but I'm lucky that it was me. So there's case studies like that, which hopefully you've kind of enabled them to, I don't know, either you've given them a wider platform, or you've given them kind of more confidence to speak up. And then I've done interviews with late diagnosed ADHD and women who've given up drinking. But I sometimes share them. I don't always share them on social media because sometimes they're personal. Sometimes it's not, it's not up to me because it's not my story. I've literally just told their story. So the ones that I share are first person, because I'm not kind of compromising anyone else by doing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about press releases then. You referred to them a bit. Now, within my PR business, because I said to you that I try to keep it very journalism focused, I will rarely send a press release to the national press. or any contacts. Usually, what I'll do is if I know a national journalist like you or someone else, and then they've got a specialist area of interest, I might say to them, "Look, I'm working with this person. Here's a summary of their story. Are you interested?" Which would you prefer to see? A press release or an email that just gives you 2 or 3 paragraphs?
I think it depends on the relationship with the PR. So if it's a PR I've worked with before, I mean, for travel, I generally get that kind of approach, or, we're working with this client, they look after this and this. Are you interested? And I can see straight away. But I think if it's something, I don't do so much of parenting before, but if it's like a press release about, uh, say, increase in expenses for children's parties, or the number of children now having parties or something, then a press release is easier because it's got stats, it's got the name of, there's a quote on it, it's got the name of the company, and so it depends. But if it's like interviewing a client, interviewing someone, so this case study that I'm trying to work with at the moment, that was through, he emails and said this is her story. That wouldn't work so well on a press release. So I prefer probably, yeah, your approach if I know them and I've worked with them before. But if I don't know them, and if it's more kind of stats based and I'm going to use it as a hook, then a press release is easier because you've got, bulletproof lists that you can refer to and you can copy and paste. But if it's, yeah, a more personal, in depth interview, then not a press release.
Okay, so PRs out there need to be just a little bit more thoughtful about how and what information they're sending, rather than. Do you ever get a sense that you get press releases that are just sent out through a database, are totally
Oh,
irrelevant,
yeah.
and have been sent to hundreds of other people?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we all get those, dear journalist, dear Fuller, yeah, or dear just blank. Sometimes, yeah. I mean, obviously, we just don't. I don't even look at the generic ones really, unless it's specific. If unless it's, I don't know, something that is really timely, or immediately resonates. Yeah, they just get deleted. And with Gmail, I mean, you've probably got the same account. Like it just goes into promotions as well. So I wouldn't even look at those really. I mean, I don't get as many press releases actually. I think I probably used to get more, um, probably more when I was doing B2B,
Hmm.
about workplace stuff. But I now get more about the travel side, probably. Um,
Let's talk about travel then for a bit, because I've worked with hospitality businesses before, either training them. So if I don't know, let's just say I work with a nice hotel in a very Cotswoldy, beautiful place. They were interested in you traveling and reviewing. Would you do something like that? What is your expectation? What floats your boat when it comes to a possible travel story? And how do you even pitch it, place it, make money from it?
Yeah, okay. Good question. The reviews are really hard because I'm sadly not a reviewer. I know some people do that. Lucky them. So I find what works well for travel is the lifestyle angle of travel. So there was a hotel in Cornwall that contacted me, saying that they've joined forces with a car company, a well-known 4x4 car company. So immediately, like I say, with that, I've got to be able to get it straight away. I'm like perimenopausal in my 40s, quite nervous about driving now. Never used to be. I don't like coastal roads. Get a bit anxious about it. So the fact that they are, yeah, promoting this car, and they are based in Cornwall, I can straight away see an angle, which covers both travel, but also, yeah, the motoring side, I guess you'd call it. So that was like an easy win, really, because I can see it's got a family aspect. I can see they can do a shoot down there, they can organise it straight away. Um, some of the other pieces, sort of travel wise, I do a lot on the neuro inclusive side. So I'm waiting for a piece to run at the moment. It's a big holiday company that have introduced a sensory room to two of their family resorts. So I took my son along. He's very straightforward, no filter, like most autistic people, tells you exactly what he thinks. And I put that down, and he's 13 now, so he's a bit old for this sort of thing. Lots of them are geared towards younger kids, but he's also much more articulate now about what does and doesn't work from his perspective. So that was one piece. And then I find what works quite well are so what other pieces have I done that have done well? Like I did a Centre Parks because I've been to pretty much every Centre Parks, and I've been to one in Holland, and then I went to a resort in Denmark by the Lego house. The Lego house is amazing, genuinely Euro inclusive. So that was a press trip for one company, and then we did a day trip of our own, you know, that we spent basically that wasn't organised by the PR to this resort. And I said, it's better than Centre Parks because it's a similar theme. So that those sorts of things do quite well. And then for the Cotswold, there was like a new treehouse place, and I think I said something like they're like Bond style tree houses. They're really like cutting edge avant garde design. So again, like it's just you think, oh, the headline, well, that's going to work, and then picture wise, it's obviously going to be strong because they look amazing. So it's all those things. I think about the headline, I think about pictures. Um, they're not going to want to hear from me if I just say, oh, there's another lush hotel in the Cotswolds. But it's like, is it the new Pig? Is it the new Soho House? Like it's just a little extra that you can add. Is this going to be the new celeb hotspot? That sort of thing. It's always just thinking about how's it going to, play out.
Mm.
And the other thing, that you'll be very aware of, I'm sure, alongside the kind of increase in first person pieces, particularly from women, we've also obviously always thinking now about clicks. We're always thinking about the clickbait culture. I'm really not. I don't love that aspect of how it's gone. But and editors will quite often say to me, "Oh, that one didn't do so well for us, so we're not commissioning more on that." Or they'll say, "Oh, yeah, that one did really well, so we're looking more on that." So I've done a couple of travel pieces about a recent holiday to Spain. Well, it was a press trip to Mallorca, and obviously Soler is where they've had loads of the protests and the anti-tourism AI campaign. So then it's just my experience as a visitor, and then I'll do a shout out on socials for anyone else that's been to Spain, that's living there at the moment. So it's a travel story, but it's a kind of broad travel. But yeah, the straightforward review pieces, I find, well, either I'm not the right person, or yeah, I find them really hard to place. Obviously, it'd be amazing to be paid to go to a hotel and just write about, a puff piece, but sadly, that's not worked really.
Let's talk about the click thing because I've had that as well with my journalist hat on. Um, I've always struggled with. I worked twice on a very, very big campaign around charity on TV. I won't name it what it is, but it won't take a big leap. Where I got upset really because they would choose what stories to tell based on how people would donate money. And as a journalist, I used to think, well, actually, there are 10 stories here that are all worthy and all should be told, but you're just picking on the two that people will donate money to. So I know that's slightly different to clickbait. I've also got a good friend who's a journalist in San Francisco, and he knows, for example, that if he writes about Elon Musk, that story will do very well and be clicked on
Mm.
a lot. But if he writes on, someone in San Francisco that started an independent business that's really unusual and that he really likes, he might place it, but it's going to do a lot less well. So, I mean, how do you face up to that reality that we all have to deal with?
I mean, it's not something I embrace or relish at all. But I know, yeah, Elon Musk. I mean, for the travel stories, I went to San Francisco on a trip to the California, a random place called Visalia, which is supposedly like got this autism friendly accreditation. I didn't rate it. That was a really bad trip, to be honest. We can talk about that later. But the two stories that I got were using the Waymo cars because of Elon Musk, for the Times, because people love to hate him. What sane person would like him, really? Um, so I know that is going to do well. I know that you're going to get clicks. So I kind of, but I don't like the idea that as a female journalist, I am basically a lamb to the slaughter, in terms of it's fair game. People seem to think like, we're not politicians. I'm not representing anyone. I'm not speaking up on behalf of anyone, but it seems to be editors seem to think, oh well, that's done really well, and I think what you mean is I've got a load of abuse on social media for that. so that generated more clicks and shares. So I really struggle with it on a personal level and a professional level. I don't like it at all. And I've asked one national newspaper in particular to remove me from their tags on Twitter and X because it's just a bun fight. And I know that some writers seem to engage with it. Some seem to even enjoy it. But I'm not being paid for that. I'm just being paid to do a job. 40p a word if I'm lucky. Something, sometimes less, sometimes more. And yeah, I don't want to actively encourage that, but you've kind of got to be active on social media, I think, if you're a freelancer, and you've got to engage with it. And yeah, it's not something I relish. I don't like what it says about society. I don't like the polarization of social media. I don't like how there's no nuance. I hate the fact people just seem to be looking for things to get angry for, or at, and the journalist is often the kind of the scapegoat. So yeah, I struggle with that on every level, really. But at the
I,
same time, you can't ignore it, can you? You know.
no, I mean, I did a story about my son not getting into his secondary school years ago. This was when his sisters went there, and I got a lot of abuse. That went in the Daily Mail, and I was
What?
happy.
Why did you get abuse? What?
Oh yeah, all sorts of things. What was I? I was like a tiger mother. I hadn't read the rules. I was a bitch. I
Oh,
was horrible. I mean, and that was, how old was he? So he was 11 and he's now 18. So that's a few years ago now. Um, but of course, that story comes around every year, Georgina.
mm,
Every year, this year, Ramesh Ranganathan had exactly the same problem with one of his children not getting into the same school as his siblings. So, of course, people do a search and it throws up the story that I did all those years ago. And it went, I was on the Jeremy Vine show. And I'm happy to talk about this because it was a ridiculous situation. So, personally, for me, I tend to, depends how many comments there are, because
mm,
sometimes it's impossible to deal with, and I will
mm,
just switch it off and just think, oh, I can't deal with that many. But if it's a reasonable number, my rule of thumb is I respond to the positive ones and ignore the negative ones because I can't do anything about those people. But
mm,
you've had more than your fair share of that, haven't you?
mm. I have. I mean, the ones that spring to mind, like the most hate I've had. There was one. Well, there was one which we won't talk about, but there was one which was about not having central heating in the Telegraph, which, obviously I'd love to be able to afford to do the whole house central heating, but we've lived here for over 10 years and we've kind of managed, and we have God, who knew this was like the absolute devil's spawn? We have a wood burner, an old wood burner, which we get cleaned out and we get logs from either delivered or from, anyway. And that went viral, I think is what they say, on Twitter. And I was called, yeah, posh, privileged, out of touch. And it was during the whole fuel crisis, and they were basically saying that I was like trying to advocate that people should manage without central heating, which was just totally not what I was saying. And I said, obviously, it's not great, but we put another jumper on, put your thermals on, we sort of manage, and it's not ideal. We got loads of hate for that because there was a picture with the wood burner and the fire. And then the other thing that I got loads of hate for was again for the Telegraph. And I think that was retweeted by the Guardian French correspondent. And I basically said France was like not the most child friendly country because my mother had a place near Bergerac and we used to go there when the children were little. And you go to Portugal or Greece or Spain or somewhere and they say, come in, and they're very welcoming and very relaxed. And you go to France and they say, or this part in particular, you don't have, we don't have children's menus, no, we don't have a changing table, no, they eat what you eat. And, if the children make any noise, you just get people looking at you very disapprovingly. So, yeah, but then I got accused of xenophobia and racism against France. It was just bizarre. Yeah. So I hate that. Like I know, as I say, there's some writers, there's columnists who actively engage with that and they do reply to comments, but I don't. I mean, I might reply to nice comments and I get emails and things. I always reply to those. In fact, there is one I need to reply to. But yeah, I sometimes I get horrible emails. Oh, and then there was another one that I did last year, which the headline, obviously we don't write the headline. The headline made it sound like a business. It said something like, "My side hustle pays for my holidays." And actually, we had one litter of puppies, which I'll never do again. It was a one-off, something I've wanted to do for years. But there was a picture of me with all the dogs, and it made it look like it was some sort of puppy farm. And I had loads of horrible messages from animal rights activists. If they'd actually read the article, it would say that this is like a once in a lifetime thing that we've done this summer with the children. It's a family thing. We're keeping one puppy. She's here underneath my feet at the moment. But yeah, there's things like that people are just looking for. They just want to hate, and they want to target you. And I got loads of horrible messages saying I was trashy and cruel, and
Mm. Mm.
so I can understand if people thought that I just sort of did this, as an extra side add-on, but that wasn't what the article said. But again, that's an example of a headline by a newspaper that's going to generate hate.
Yeah. I mean, and I do often, when I'm working with clients, I always say, read the content, or even when someone's approached me and they don't like an article that they've been included in, and I'll say to them, read the content. The headline might not be related to what you've said. It might be another case study within, and that's perfectly valid, or it might be a clickbait headline. And what can we do?
Yeah.
But we've run out of time. I could talk to you all day.
Oh wow.
I
Halfway,
know,
gosh.
so quickly. So, very quickly to wrap up, if people want to follow you and find you and really find out what you're interested in writing about, where do they go?
So I do have a private Instagram just because there are a few weirdos, but it's Georgina Fuller Writer is my, all one word, is my handle. Is that the right term? And I'm just Georgina Fuller on LinkedIn as well, and I'm a bit more active on there. Or I'm Georgina Fuller Journalist on Facebook.
Thanks very much to Georgina for today, joining us on Real PR. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. You know where to find me, scottmedia.uk, or you can pop onto Facebook and join Fiona Scott's PR tribe, answer the questions, and you can join in. It's totally free. See you again soon.